So there's a lot of country music that has come out in 2024, and there's a lot of albums that I haven't actually talked about here on the channel. I feel like I mention stuff on Instagram and TikTok and then just to friends around town, and sometimes I'm like, have I actually talked about this on the channel? And so today, I'm gonna do a little bit of a catch up. I'm gonna go through some comments of albums y'all have been asking me to weigh in on and weigh in on them. Some of these I've listened to a lot, some of them I've listened to a little, but it's gonna be the broad strokes of here's how that album hit me. Because in the last Megan Moroney video, a lot of people made it clear to me in DMs that I should be talking about the Sturgill album, not Megan, and I'm just like, guys, on a practical level, Megan almost 3 times outsold Sturgill in the first week, and she almost doubled Hardy. And on some level, you gotta talk about what the people are talking about. And I think Megan's awesome and a good artist, and you know, people judge the sequins and the tutus, and she's good. Anyway, that video rules. Thanks for all the love on that. But I am gonna talk about Sturgill and Hardy and a bunch of other stuff. Before I do though, I wanna talk about Factor, which is sponsoring today's video. I don't know if y'all have noticed, but I've been trying to get fit this summer, and part of that is avoiding getting fries and a milkshake when I go out at night. And Factor has helped me maintain my routines and goals. Factor takes a lot of the stress of meal planning out of the equation. You can skip all the lines at the grocery store and all the time it takes to prep and have chef-crafted, dietitian approved, never frozen meals delivered right to your door. Every week they've got over 35 meals to choose from, and you can choose meals that fit your diet, whether that's calorie smart or vegan and veggie or keto. Basically, you get a box on your doorstep and you unbox them, you throw them in the fridge. When you're ready to eat one, it's ready in 2 minutes. And the food is nice. I mean, this was an herb-crusted chicken that I was enjoying. And if you're looking for gourmet meals, Factor has premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, truffle butter, broccolini, asparagus. And I love that Factor has the option to skip a week if you've got a special event or some reason you're not gonna be in town or don't need any food sent to you. You can head to factor75.com and use code GradySmith50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month of orders. That's code GradySmith50 at factor75.com, and you can get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month of orders. Thanks to them for sponsoring the video, and now let's read some of your comments. Is this right? Okay. First comment comes from Luke Bradbury, 1395. I can't wait to hear your take on the new Sturgill album.
Here come those sirens again.
The new Sturgill album is called Passage du Desir. I don't know how to say it. It's in French. Yeah, but if you didn't know, Sturgill Simpson is now releasing music as Johnny Blue Skies, who we had previously heard as a collaborator on a Diplo track. So again, for all the people whining that I'm ignoring little independent artists like Sturgill Simpson, I'm like, yo, he's signed to Atlantic, collaborating with Diplo. It is different than it was with High Top Mountain, but whatever, I still really love him. And this Johnny Blue Skies record, I actually think is excellent. And in a lot of ways, I think it's much more listenable than the last few Sturgill records. He's kind of always gone all over the place. His first 2 records were way more inspired by bluegrass. Then he kind of went more into rock and certainly into hard rock on Sound and Fury. Then between the Cut and Grass albums and the Ballad of Dude and Juanita, we got a way more simplified sound. Cut and Grass, obviously bluegrass. Dude and Juanita had a way more Western sound. And on this new album, I feel like it's a lot more kind of soul, rock, a little bit of Allman Brothers, a little bit of Steely Dan. These aren't really fiddly, creaky country tunes. These are gonna have way more organ on them. And they're kind of sprawling. Some of the songs are extremely long. My personal favorite, Jupiter's Ferry,
I hear there's fairies out on Jupiter.
in which he's talking about a friend that has committed suicide and reflecting on it and wishing he'd shown more love, is really an epic in its scope. Mint Tea is another awesome track and what appears to be kind of the crowd favorite.
So put another Band-Aid on my bullet wound.
It includes a line I love where he says, "You need an early morning matcha? Girl, I gotcha." Which I love. But it's just an invitation to enjoy some late night mint tea with him, and he's asking, why are you afraid of little old me? Insert the dreaded reference that none of you want to hear. My other favorite track is If the Sun Never Rises Again. And the style of the song aside, it almost reminds me of If We Were Vampires by Jason Isbell lyrically. Because he's talking about sort of the temporary nature of this beautiful love that he has is sort of a threat to him, and it's sort of also what makes it beautiful. You know, like, what if the sun never rises again? couldn't we go on in this night forever, just feeling the way we're feeling now? And Sturgill, always one for self-loathing, is like, I still don't get how you let me in. It's a really beautiful song. The whole record is really beautiful. It's one that you can just play and let it run through. It's a 41-minute listen across 8 songs. So they're long songs, but they're just great. I feel like melodically, this is one of the strongest things Sturgill's ever done. Despite feeling like, the moniker and all that's a little pretentious, there is a divide that it creates when everything is so artiste-like, but the music's good. And I like that he released it as Johnny Blue Skies, if only because I have a video called We've Reached the End of Sturgill Simpson, and it did not invalidate that video. Although, I don't know if it's his label or what, but maybe just to help the public along, it is released as Johnny Blue Skies and Sturgill Simpson on Spotify at least. Daniel Dalton 7923 says, "Hey Grady, are you planning on reviewing Luke Combs' new album, Fathers and Sons?" Sure.
A wrench in his hand and a beer in the other. I couldn't make a man any tougher.
I really liked this album, and I feel like it was a cool artistic move for Luke Combs to put it out. I especially loved the statement he put out on Instagram about it, and how he knows his fans might want beer songs and hard rockers, but this is just where he's at in life. He's a new dad to 2 kids, and he wants to sing about being a dad. These songs aren't dressed up a ton. It's kind of your standard Luke Combs down the middle country, but a lot more acoustic. We've already talked about that first single, The Man He Sees in Me. The other best ones on this for me were I Thought All He Ever Did Was Leave, kind of about a kid's limited view of what his dad does when he actually leaves the house. He knew his dad was leaving and going to work, but he didn't know, someone's putting the tooth fairy money under the pillow. I also loved Remember Him That Way.
There's a little more slow in his go, a little less rock in his roll.
Which is very connected to The Man He Sees in Me, but it's almost Luke's own perspective of his father rather than his kid's perspective of him. And how even though he's getting older now and starting to gray, Luke still remembers him 10 feet tall. That song, the instrumentation on it is so compelling and beautiful to me. And there's lots of great kind of shades on the album, happy and sad. For a surprise release, it does kind of feel a little bit not like a real era of Luke Combs. Put it out, and it's such a quieter album that I don't feel like we're gonna live in this world for very long. It doesn't feel like a big moment like Growing Up did. Or no, Getting Old. I prefer Getting Old to Growing Up. But I think it's a nice record, especially if you wanna, think about family and dad. KCJTM says, "Gotta hear your thoughts on the new Kaitlin Butts album. Don't think I've been this excited about a smaller artist since Zach Bryan's takeoff." Yeah, Kaitlin Butts just put out an album called Roadrunner. If you're unfamiliar with Kaitlin Butts, she's got some awesome songs. You might recognize her voice from A Life Where We Work Out with Flatland Cavalry. But Kaitlin's got an impressive discography. She's got some murder ballads in there like White River. She's got some love songs like How Lucky Am I? And Roadrunner is really kind of her Western cowgirl album. And she led this with a song called Hunt You Down, which is funny. And I didn't even know to be a Kesha cover until I found out later it was a cover of a Kesha song. But it definitely works in the kind of Annie Oakley world of this album. Kaitlin has an affinity for kitsch. And I feel like if you like that kind of really campy style on songs like Wild Juanita's Cactus Juice,
out in the middle of BFE, somewhere south of Rural Route 3,
you're gonna love parts of this album. Me personally, I prefer the songs that just feel a little more down to earth, and she has a bunch of those here. My favorites are Other Girls Ain't Having Any Fun. And she kind of talks about her own perception as being someone perceived as impolite. And she's like, well, fine, but other girls ain't having any fun. And then I love Rest Your Head on My Pillow.
Come rest your head on my pillow.
That just feels like a kind of beautifully romantic, seductive saloon tune. And really classic in that way. So yeah, I guess when listening to this album, I wasn't in the silliest mood. Man, I go through phases. Sometimes I'll hear a song like Whole Lotta Little by Emily Ann Roberts, and I love just like fast, fiddly silliness. And then other phases of life, I'm like, no, give me something more kind of deeper and grounded. Albums probably need both types of songs, but I like the more serious side of Kaitlin on this album than the kind of goofy side. But she just has her own style. Her albums are always delivered kind of as a fully conceived package. And this one is no exception. Gosh, some of these are hard. I had my intern pull some comments. Yes, I have a summer intern. He's wonderful. Some of these I'm out of my depth. Jacob Whitehurst says, can you talk about the Twisters album coming out? Yeah, I suppose I can talk about it, but not that credibly. Twisters, the big blockbuster movie, just put out a 27-song album. and it has all country artists on it and Benson Boone. And that's really cool that country is so in its moment that like a big summer tentpole is all kind of built around country music. But also it's just a lot of freaking songs, and they were putting them out so much. It was like one a week at first, and then it was one every day by the end of it, that I was a little fatigued by the time the album came out. But I mean, it's stacked with people, with Luke Combs and Miranda Lambert and Lainey Wilson and Megan Maroney and Dylan Gossett and Wyatt Flores and Jake Cohn. And there's a song on there with Shania and Breland. That's not very good, in my opinion. But I feel like I gave it such a cursory listen. I knew more about the pre-release tracks, and definitely my favorite of those was the Luke Combs one, Ain't No Love in Oklahoma. That song just rips. The other one I really liked from the pre-releases was Miranda's. I think Ain't in Kansas Anymore is a great song. I've even started to see like a line dance trend maybe starting to happen with it. But I feel like it's so big and blustering and trying to fit every different side of country, from kind of the Tanner Adells of the world to the Wyatt Floreses of the world, and then maybe the Tyler Halversons really kind of off the map. That's so cool, but it doesn't feel as curated as maybe the Hunger Games soundtrack felt to me, where I'm like, oh, this is really honed in on a style. So I don't know, it's cool. It's certainly popular. It's streaming really well. James Curry 177 says, great list, Grady. Curious what you think of Sierra Ferrell's new album, I Can't Stop Listening.
Wake up again in an old motel. Is it somewhere different? I can't tell.
Trail of Flowers came out in March, and I think it's a really, really good album. I'm kind of surprised how little sort of splash it feels like it's continued to make in pop culture. But I'm also kind of not surprised, because I feel like the album feels so kind of like classic American tradition, starting off with a song called American Dreaming. You get an old time feel through the album, a ton of fiddle on there, and yet I wonder if the reason it's not kind of connecting at a bigger level is because I feel like all the imagery that surrounds it feels like Victorian burlesque, like mixed with Joan of Arc, mixed with, I don't know, just a lot of the visuals. I wonder if this album had been kind of more, standard like white shirt and blue jean shorts or something, if people would be kind of completely gravitating to it, because the songs on here are good. But regardless of the imagery and whether that did or didn't help kind of the album rollout, the songs are good, the music's great, and it's hard not to be with Sierra Ferrell. Her voice is so striking and so agile, and just when she jumps up to high notes, it feels like Patsy Cline mixed with maybe Edith Piaf sometimes. The song American Dreaming feels completely just classic.
I've been American dreaming.
And cool and American. This album was produced by Eddie Spear, who you might know from American Heartbreak, and I think they're a very, very good match together, because he tracks his music live and it all feels live, and you gotta be pretty darn good to do music that way, and Sierra is. When this album came out, I was really addicted to the song Money Train.
He wasn't built for rain out on the Texas plains.
I think the melody of that is really gorgeous. There's definitely a sort of fun, grounded vibe on a lot of these songs. It's just kind of flirty and cool. It's not always so serious like on Dollar Bill Bar. I'll Come Off the Mountain is another little jig. But then on songs like Lighthouse or Wish You Well, you get this way more beautiful, almost sometimes even gospel-y feeling sound. I don't know if you saw, but Sierra Ferrell is one of the leaked collaborators on the upcoming Post Malone album. So, maybe she'll get a way bigger look. But hey, here on the channel, we've been repping Sierra for many years, okay? We love her here. Grady, you need to hop on that new Ernest album. It's amazing, says Masi Pizza. Okay, man, I listened to that so long ago.
Well, part of me wants to so bad I can't stand it.
The Ernest album, Nashville, Tennessee. Really country. He is sticking with this kind of traditional countryside. Yeah, there's some like poppy tunes here and there, but for the most part, this is one of the more country albums you're going to hear coming out of the mainstream. I said it a few videos back, but I think his song Honky Tonk Fairy Tale is excellent.
But I just close my eyes and find that sweet escape.
And I love all the steel in it. And I love the visualizer, like the video they did for it. It's so cool looking. The duet with Lainey Wilson, Would If I Could, is also great.
I'd love to say yes, but it's best if I don't.
And the collab with Lucas Nelson on there, Why Dallas, that is a fun little jam. And it's funny because Cowgirls with Morgan Wallen has become this huge hit now, and I feel like that's actually on a practical level more the sound people prefer from Ernest, but tracks on here like the one with Morgan Wallen or Redneck Shit, not my favorite. Although I still like Kiss of Death, the one that kind of launched this whole era. I feel like the album's kind of too long. It feels more standard in its subject matter, song to song, in a way that makes an album like this feel a bit monotonous to me. I feel like for a really, really long album, you either gotta be a massive star, or it's gotta be kind of serious in tone where you're really listening for all of the clues and the words, or it's gotta be some kind of broader artistic journey a la the Beyonce record, which, by the way, I talked about on TikTok and Instagram. Anyway, didn't love Ernest's album, but there are some songs that I do absolutely love. Amanda Bolanos 3460 says, this isn't really related to this, but you should definitely review Carly Pearce's new album, Hummingbird. It's so good, you won't regret it.
You don't yell, 'cause what the hell? Different.
Okay, I listened to Hummingbird the day it came out. It did not hit me the same way that Carly Pearce's 29 Written in Stone did. I thought it was really good, and I thought it was really country, and Carly has maintained that sound. But for some reason, it didn't have that immediate feeling that Carly's last record did. And maybe that's just because there was some of that gossip around that record. She was really recently divorced, and it had a rawness about it. And I don't quite think this album captures that same lightning in a bottle. But that said, I think there are some excellent songs on here. Truck on Fire.
Liar, liar, truck on fire, flames rolling off of your Goodyear tire.
It really is a jam. Kind of taking the whole liar, liar, pants on fire, but like liar, liar, truck on fire, making it into like a saucy revenge song. That works. I know some people think Heels Overhead is kind of slut-shamey, where she's like,
Bet your head over heels, 'cause she's heels over head for you.
but I'm sorry, that kind of is a petty lyric that I think works. I feel like the point of the song is being petty. I also think My Place really works on this album, where Carly's like, I'm sorry that you feel it's not my place to question if there's someone in my place. She's not much for writing about happy relationships, and I actually think a dose of kind of a different mood would make this album flow a little bit better. Not that there's none of that, but you get what I mean. And I have to give credit. The other thing I really noticed on this album is how much Carly favors the dobro. She really likes a dobro sound, and I think it gives her music a pretty unique texture in the landscape of the mainstream. But that's kind of all my thoughts on it. I don't remember more. Tuggernauts says, I'd love to see an album review of 9 Lives when it's released. Koe Wetzel. I have a feeling it's going to catapult Koe into the mainstream of country.
I'ma take the high road, maybe get stoned, have a little too much.
Yeah, Koe Wetzel put out his follow-up to Hell Paso, and I feel like at the end of Hell Paso, it was sort of, there was the suggestion on the table that once Koe turned 30, he was going to make a true country record, and the last track of Hell Paso kind of led you to believe it's just going to be straightforwardly country. I would say it's not like some concept country record. It's more country than Koe Wetzel has been in the past. It still rocks out here and there, but there's almost more kind of an alt-rock feel to the whole thing than there is kind of the blustering frat rock of early Koe or straight up country music. He switched up his producers on this one, and we've got Gabe Simon from the Noah Kahan world on this. And for the most part, I think it really works. Damn Near Normal is a grower of a song to me.
And I'm all turned up like a Rio Grande, drink 10 times a week.
When that first came out, I was like, man, this doesn't hit like Koe should, but there's something very hypnotic and entrancing about it. And it definitely maintains the narrative that Hell Paso had, where Koe is sort of like, I'm a disaster, my life is falling apart all around me, and no one seems to know or care. And on Damn Near Normal, he's talking about how abnormal his life is and how he's used to, you know, the drugs and the girls and all these things that he probably shouldn't be used to. On Sweet Dreams, another one that came out before the album, he's like, it's hard to have sweet dreams when I'm such a nightmare. So he's still definitely in his feels. I don't particularly care for High Road, although I feel like that was the biggest pre-release track. To me, it feels kind of like just loud butt rock. But when you boil down a lot of the Texas rock scene, it is kind of like butt rock, and that's not a bad thing. I don't love that song. And there was a whole controversy around it because Jessie Murph was featured on it, but then they released the solo version without her. And then she said like, oh, I'm so glad to be done with Koe Wetzel fans who are mad at me being on the song, and kind of implied that they're, you know, meth addicts. Which, I don't know, I kind of thought Koe would roll with that and think it was funny. Because it is kind of funny. In general, the rollout of this album just felt too long to me. Like, Damn Near Normal and Sweet Dreams and High Road were connecting on such a huge level. I was kind of like, just put out the album. But I feel like we're in this thing now where people, even really big stars, are putting out like 5 or 6 songs over 5 or 6 months leading up to an album. And I get that. That's an effective strategy. But I wonder if it's more effective when you're on your come up. But then when you're a big star, it needs to be a shorter rollout period. It's like going to Costco before you go to lunch and you start taking a sample and then another sample and then another sample, and then by the time you're ready for lunch, you're like, oh, I'm not hungry anymore. And I feel like when an artist's already a really big star, I actually only want like 2 songs before their album. But whatever, that's marketing discussion, not about the music. On the music, favorite song on this album by a mile was the song Lee. And it starts off with a funny line of like, if you crossed off all the girls whose names end in Lee, there'd be no one left in Texas. But I love when you get to those big power chords in the chorus, leave me alone. Feels really kind of anthemic. And then I was obsessed with the song Reconsider.
If I tried, would you reconsider?
And immediately reconsidered whether I'd heard that song before, and I'm like, didn't I love when this song was on an Aaron Lewis album? And I did, and I remember learning then that it was a cover of, I think, both Charlie Robinson and Keith Gaddis, because Keith Gaddis wrote the song. And now I've heard 4 different versions of Reconsider, and every time that song is so good. There's also a cover of Depression and Obsession on here, and that's way outstreaming everything else, which is just kind of hilarious. It's very Koe's vibe, and it's a smart move on his part. I do think the rock moments on this album don't rock out as hard as I have come to crave. 9 Lives just doesn't hit as hard as I kind of want it to hit. I want that more kind of in-my-face guitar and drums. And this is a bit more subdued of a production, which I think makes the album really sonically cohesive. But I think it makes sense given like the change around in producers that it's not going to be exactly that same sound I'm used to. On the whole, I thought it was a really solid album, and mostly the Koe Wetzel we've come to know and love. Speaking of rocking out, we have Megan Titherington 7681. Please do Hardy's new album. Okay, we're staying in the rock side.
Started out with rifles, trucks and hunting season. Now I got my middle finger up.
And this album is definitely a rock album, as I feel like Hardy's marketing has made clear. They're always like, the new rock album from Hardy. And all the songs here are all caps, because if you remember on Mockingbird and the Crow, Mockingbird was lowercase, The Crow was uppercase, the rock side of that album, and now these are all uppercase, and this is rock, and I don't know if he's going to continue this shtick. In general, on this album, I feel like my video from the very beginning of the year when Quit came out, which is called The Curse of Self-Awareness, aged really well, because this album is extremely self-aware and a lot about the music industry. Hardy calls himself an orphan in this country music town.
You're a fan of this country music town.
And he talks about how he's got a soul for sale in a kind of indictment of the music industry.
I got a soul for sale, just sitting there.
Which is a collaboration with Fred Durst, but it kind of has Fred Durst like sort of soft rapping, and a video that's entirely AI. I don't know if that's the point of the video, where he's like, look how I'm selling my soul and making a whole AI video, or if this is just budget cuts, I don't know what. But all the faces in the video are kind of blurry AI faces. All the text in the video is nonsensical AI text. Maybe they made it with Sora. I don't know. That's a side point. And then obviously you get another music industry song in Rockstar, one of the pre-releases from the album. And I guess just something about being so aware that he's trying to make rock music and being from the country world, it's starting to just feel super lame to me, even more than it did with Quit, where I'm like, okay, but you kind of did this narrative on Sold Out, and then you kind of did it on Radio Song. The whole album of Mockingbird and the Crow was about these 2 sides of yourself. And like, we get it. I think it's actually very cool to just call yourself country but make rock music and let everyone fight about it. It doesn't feel as cool to be like, I'm making rock music and have it in so many songs, especially when you've had so much success in country. Like, I don't feel like he's an orphan in this country music town. And so those songs like don't hit as hard for me, rather than just the songs that are about, you know, whatever the song is about. I really like Good Girl Phase. It's kind of a mean song about like, no, don't believe that girl that she's a good girl. She's not. She's just in a good girl phase and she's keeping up appearances. My favorite melody on the whole album has got to be, well, it's called WHYBWL. No, WHYBWML. Where have you been my whole life? No, WHYBWML. MWL. Did it.
Well, you've been my whole life. Well, baby, now I know.
But that song has like almost a Blink 182 feel to it, and I like kind of the poppy punk elements that he has on songs here and there. Although sometimes I feel like he settles for a kind of silly or awkward lyric. Like on Soul for Sale when he's like, put some foreigns in my 13-car garage. I feel like that's a good verse line, but I'm like, man, was that good enough to be in the chorus? The other strongest melody to me, and my favorite of the pre-release singles, is definitely Psycho.
If you ever leave me, girl, I'll get a face tattoo, steal a truck.
Psycho to me is kind of just a great pop rock hit. The big guitar licks after he delivers that line in the chorus, fell in love with a psycho, like that's so cool sounding. And it's got that awesome build going into the chorus. I just think that song really works. I Don't Miss gives you a little bit of that Kill Shit Till I Die that we got on The Crow. And then there's a lot of themes of life and death and kind of, you know, angels and demons on this record. And I think it's very much supposed to be part of kind of Hardy's mental health journey. He had that big bus crash last year and got very kind of overwhelmed and was traumatized by it. And I definitely hear a lot of those themes of, you know, your soul and being dead. There's a song on here called Time to Be Dead. And you get more of that theme, plus with a love element to it, on 6 Feet Under, Callie's song, the album closer. I think Hardy is such a talented writer. I just wish he would more show us some of these stories rather than telling us so explicitly, like, this is about the music industry and this is how I see myself. To me, it creates that divide with the music. So while I love a few songs on here, this album really didn't hit as hard for me. And I do feel like Hardy is free to do whatever he wants, although he seems determined to believe that people don't want him to do that. I wrote down a bunch of other albums in case they came up, but just so you know, on Instagram, talked about Beyonce, I've talked about Oliver Anthony's, and I talked about Casey Musgrave's Deeper Well. Casey might only be on TikTok, but whatever. Somewhere in my many social medias, I've talked about these things. At this point, I feel like those moments have passed, but, you know, just go scroll back. Charlie Crockett, I was supposed to talk about $10 Cowboy, but now he just put out another album today. Kenny Chesney's album, do I remember any songs on there? I think Just to Say We Did is a song I remember on there. It might even have my favorite Do What We Do lyric. Cody Jinks, his album Changed the Game. Love the title track. That song rules. I love Always Running. And then I love the final song, I think it's called What You Love. And you really get some almost like fatherly wisdom of like, find what you love and do it well. You get choirs on those. It's kind of cool. And it's just a great Cody Jinks record. If you like him at all, you'll love the album. Shane Smith and the Saints. Oh gosh. I loved Navajo Norther from that album. Randall King. There's a song about rain that I like. Connor Smith. Smoky Mountains. That's the one I really remember from that. The Castellos. I did talk about the Castellos recently. Cowboy Kind of Love. Still love that song. Oh my gosh. And their new song with Wyatt Flores, Sober Sundays. So good. This is what needs to happen. Someone needs to just like give me things to talk about and I can talk about more recent things. That would be good. Because like right now, when the hell am I going to talk about the Red Clay Strays album? But all I know after one listen is, it's so damn good. It's so good. I'm Still Fine is my jam from the new Red Clay Strays record, which I'm going to be spinning a lot of, I can tell. But anyway, that's my catch-up or catch-up of sorts for this video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again to Factor for sponsoring, and I'll see y'all with more country content very soon. Bye.